Hi, I'm Alan. My normal co-host, Dennis Sharon, is taking some time off enjoying a sabbatical from work. Since Dennis is out, we're going to rotate with some guest interviewers. Today, my co-host is Earl Blackman. Earl is one of the founding shareholders of our firm and is a Lean Six Sigma Green Belt, as well as a CPA.
This is guest host Earl Blackman. Today, Alan Cave and I got the chance to chat with Patrick Dungan. Patrick is an associate at Adams and Reese, as well as the president of the University of South Alabama National Alumni Association, and also the co-owner and founder of AFC Mobile. On this episode, you'll hear how passion is what fuels Patrick's successes in all three of these positions.
Welcome to Playing Above the Line. We're a podcast that takes a peek into the daily lives of community and business leaders. Each week, we uncover different views of the path to growth, leadership, and achieving success. I'm Dennis Sharon.
And I'm Alan Cave. Dennis and I are both shareholders at Hartman, Blackman & Kilgore. We're a full-service accounting and business consulting firm. As CPAs, we've had the unique opportunity to work with many different leaders and decided we wanted a way to share their incredible stories that we've learned along the way. Well, Earl, this is guest host stint number 2 for you. Welcome.
Wow, old pro, huh?
That's right. Hey, just like riding a bike.
No, I'm tickled to do this. Glad to be back with you.
Yeah, well, I'm glad you're here. And today's guest is Patrick Dungan. And Patrick, why don't you start just by telling us a little bit about yourself and what you do today?
Thank you. I'm from Mobile, born and raised here. Only left a couple of times and always felt the need to come back. You know, I'm an attorney here in Mobile with Adams and Reese. Practice a lot of government law, government relations, municipal law, and economic development, and everything else they throw at me. I enjoy doing that. Also currently president of South Alabama's National Alumni Association.
Go Jags.
Go Jags.
I knew that's what we get that out of Earl real quick. I knew that. So
and South in Your Mouth as well. I mean, that's kind of our war eagle or roll tide. It started about 20 years ago. Earl doesn't like it.
South in Your Mouth. I've never heard that.
These old fuddy-duddies don't like it, but, you know, my generation embraced it, and it even made it into a video game a few years back.
Is that right?
That's right.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. Funny story, my 2 college roommates and I started that chant at basketball games about
I've heard that, yes.
Probably about 18 years ago, and next thing you knew, the university's athletic director was banning the cheerleaders and the band from using it.
Right.
I think which only just solidified its...
Probably did. That's usually the way those things work.
And the next thing you knew, it was in a video game, so now it's just there forever. There's nothing dirty about the phrase. It means in your face. It's you know, out there on the gridiron.
Well, that would just kind of be a generational thing, wouldn't you think, Patrick?
It certainly has turned out to be that way.
Yeah.
I was tubing down the Styx River a couple of years ago with my family, and we encountered a group of South Alabama students on one of the little sandbars there. Mm-hmm. I don't know what my reaction was when one of them, a young female who was a freshman at South Alabama, pulled her bottom lip down and showed me that SIYM was tattooed on it.
Wow.
That's commitment.
Look,
that is commitment.
I'm not going to say that I'm proud of that, because I'm not. But it was certainly interesting to see that people would do such a thing. That 18 years ago, 3 college kids were joking around at a basketball game and started something that someone who was probably born that year tattooed on their bottom lip 18 years later.
Now, I have to ask this question. And so you were tubing. She showed you this tattoo that she had. So did she know that are you that famous that she knew that you started the whole chant?
We had we got into a conversation with some other students, and they saw that I had a South Alabama hat on. You know, as I was leaving after I had a conversation with them, we were walking back to our tubes, and one of them said, "Go Jags," and I responded, "Yeah, South in Your Mouth." And they said, "What? What did you say? What do you know about that?"
That's amazing.
So I told the story of how the phrase got started, and another student corroborated it, said, "Yes, this was in the Vanguard newspaper a couple of years ago. I read this. He's telling the truth." And they said, "Hey, whatever this girl's name is," they wave her over there. They're like, "Show him, show him, show him." I was like, "You got to be kidding me." And my wife will tell you that as we were floating away, my head was so big that I didn't realize that my phone was still in my lap, unsecured, and it ended up in the bottom of Styx River.
Oh, wow.
So anyway.
Well, that only adds to the story.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The small price to pay, though, for meeting your biggest fan. Probably.
It was insured. The phone was insured. It didn't matter. Got the phone back.
Oh, my gosh.
And I guess
That's
the other
great.
thing, you were asking kind of what I do. I mentioned my paying job at Adams and Reese. I mentioned the being president of South Alabama's National Alumni Association. The other thing that takes up a lot of my time, but is a passion project of mine, is being one of the co-owners and founders of AFC Mobile, which is an amateur soccer team here in Mobile, and it's just finished its third season this past summer.
That's awesome. We want to talk about that as well. Kind of wish Dennis were here to be able to get into it with soccer with
Oh,
you.
yeah, he would
I'm
be,
not the big soccer fan that he is, but we certainly want to talk about that. So we made the South Alabama connection here. Talk a little bit about your passion for South, because that's where I first became aware of is when we met on the National Alumni Board. And as you said, you are the president of that board, and there's a lot going on there, and we want to talk about that. But just talk about your passion for South and the kind of the way you related it to the group when I initially met you. About you got your undergraduate at South, but then you got obviously your law degree, and go into that a little bit.
Sure, and of course, if South Alabama had a law school, I would have never left Mobile. But South Alabama does not have a law school, so that's the only reason I did go elsewhere. But I when I was I guess 3.5 years old, maybe, my mother got a job. She was not going to stay home with me anymore, which meant I had to go to daycare. And that job she got was working for Tom Gibson at University of South Alabama Medical Center. And she ended up retiring from USA. So USA has been a part of my family my entire life. My mom worked there. When I graduated from high school, I really wanted to go to Auburn. My grandfather had gone there. I had grown up an Auburn fan because of that. And so, but my parents said, well, but, because my mom was an employee there, they had this program in place where you could get 50% of your tuition reimbursed at the end of the semester. And I'd also been granted a scholarship to South Alabama that paid for the other half. So it's like you can go to school for free here and live at home, and, it's going to be a lot cheaper. So I reluctantly went to the University of South Alabama at the ripe old age of 17.
Oh, wow.
And, immediately got involved in all sorts of things on campus. And
Were you in student government?
I was the Chief Justice of the Student Government Association for 2 years in a row, and I was a senator for 1 year. But it was during this second year that I was a Chief Justice that I joined a band. I'd become the lead singer of a band. And that kind of was occupying my time and distracting me from other things that I needed to be doing. Grades started to suffer. I wasn't going to class because I was just, burning both ends of the candle, I guess, waiting tables when I could for money and, traveling all over the Southeast on the weekends to play fraternity parties and weddings and just what have you. So I did drop out of South in the early 2000s. Thought that I would at that point just pursue music, but that led to me ultimately moving to California in 2004. And I have an aunt who lives out there that had an extra room in her apartment, and she said I could come stay there. So while I was out there, kind of struggling to get my feet under me and figure out how to do this whole, I never really was that great of a guitar player, but I could sing. I was like, well, how am I going to find somebody that's just going to let me sing with them? But while I was out there, my father had a heart attack, and then Hurricane Ivan hit while he was in Providence Hospital. And I woke up the next day and couldn't get in touch with anybody. And, phone lines were down, things like that. And I told myself, I got to get back home. There's no way that I can continue living out here to where if something like this happens, I can't get in a car and go to be with my family. Mm-hmm. So I came back and, with my tail between my legs, I guess you could say, and re-enrolled at South. And I remember going to an advisor and saying, look at my transcript. Tell me what degree I can get the fastest based on what classes I've already taken. I just need to get a degree. I don't care what it's in. And they said, well, I think, looking at this, you've taken a lot of your prerequisites and a lot of humanities classes, and you could probably get a sociology degree the fastest. And I said, all right, sign me up. So I start taking these classes. One of the prerequisites for sociology was Anthropology 101. Dr. Mark Moberg, who's still at South, taught that class, and I absolutely fell in love with the subject of anthropology. So, of course, I changed my major again for the 5th time probably overall to anthropology. It's funny looking back, when I started at South, I was a pre-law student majoring in criminal justice and minoring in political science because I thought that's what you had to do if you wanted to go to law school. I changed that to general education or secondary education at one point. Then went to music business. I was going to be a music business major, which required taking some music classes, took music theory, and found my old saxophone and started playing it again and things like that. That was what I was doing when I dropped out and moved to California. I landed in anthropology, went through, made straight A's on this second attempt at South Alabama. And that's when I met my wife. We were working at O'Charley's together, and she was finishing up her degree at South. And I remember going to my advisor, Dr. Moberg, and saying, I really want to go to grad school in anthropology. I was really focused on the cultural anthropology aspect. Essentially what you do, you either teach or you go embed yourself in some other culture somewhere and you write about it. And something about that appealed to me. So I said, what school do I need to look at for cultural? He said, there really aren't that many, especially in the Southeast. If you want to stay close to home, they're not that easy to get into. And then he just looks at me and says, have you ever thought about going to law school? And I said, well, yeah, that was the plan all along when I was a kid. And then when I started here, that was always the plan. And he said, well, you're a good writer. You got a good head on your shoulders with that. I think you'd make a good lawyer. So I said, okay, well, here we go. Let's go back to that plan. But, with that being said, South Alabama, again, not only was it part of my life my entire childhood, and the fact that they welcomed me back with open arms after I had left and came back and really gave me the resources I needed to finish my education. And then I felt like when I got to law school, I had been well equipped by the professors at South.
So pre-law to being in a band, sociology major, anthropology major, then law school. That's a pretty winding road.
I don't walk straight.
Obviously not.
You ask my wife every time we walk down the street together. I keep bumping into her.
Well, there's a couple of directions I can go, and this is where I want to go with that. So you went from kind of the relatively stable environment of college to deciding to drop out, going to California, being in a band, but then you made the decision to come back, I think, which I guess you're saying that was the right decision to make ultimately. Yeah. So what did those experiences kind of teach you about life?
Sure. And I've never tried to hide this from anybody. The path I was on before I went to California was pretty destructive, self-destructive. I was still a kid in my very early 20s, really only acted in ways that I thought were going to benefit myself and, didn't treat those around me that loved me with the respect and love that they deserved. But that experience that I had in California was really life-changing. I remember just being really, really alone and uncertain as to what my future was going to be and sitting in this room with an air mattress and little Rubbermaid drawers to keep my belongings in. And just sitting there with a notepad, trying to write songs, but failing miserably, and then ending up kind of doing like a self-inventory. I remember just sitting there in that room one night and making 2 columns on a sheet of paper and writing down all of the qualities and characteristics of individuals that I'd encountered in my life that endeared me to some people and those that made me not like people. And then after I completed this 2-column list, thinking about others, I turned it on myself and said, which one of these characteristics on either column are characteristics that I can see in myself? And in doing so, I would circle some of the ones in that negative column that are characteristics of people that make me not like them. I say, what if I'm exhibiting these characteristics myself? There's no doubt that there's other people that think that way about me. So I'll never forget that exercise because I kind of took it to heart. I said, but there's also these good things about me, and those are the ones I need to focus on. Those are the ones I really need to work on portraying and get rid of these others. So
what were some of those positive characteristics that you identified, and talk about those people that you saw those in and how that inspired you to become the leader that you are today?
I think probably the biggest one to me is just being passionate. I've always been passionate about lots of different things, and once I get passionate about something, it's hard to pull me away from it. There's not really one single thing that I've ever been extraordinarily good at, but I've always enjoyed doing things that I'm passionate about, and that's enabled me to get pretty good at a lot of things. I'm never going to be the greatest at one thing, but if I can be pretty good at a lot of things, then I think that's what makes me happy.
Well, speaking of passion, I would think that you'd have to be really passionate about soccer to be the co-owner of a soccer team in South Alabama where, I mean, let's just face it, soccer's on the rise, but football still reigns supreme right around here, American football.
No doubt.
Sure.
So how did that come about? I mean, did you have you always had a passion for soccer so much that you've started a team in Mobile? What did that look like?
Yeah, I started playing soccer in seventh grade. I didn't even know what it was then. Tried out for football, got cut. Tried out for basketball, got cut. My dad was an athlete in high school, and I always saw myself playing sports in high school. So I was like, well, what am I going to do? So I saw this flyer on the wall for soccer tryouts. I was like, I don't know what that is, but I'll go check it out. And Coach gave me a chance, and I fell in love with it. It became my favorite sport. Played it throughout high school, and I've been a fan of the game for a long time. And there was a group of guys that were trying to start a team in Mobile, and I got connected with them a few years ago, and initially was just kind of trying to help them through the legal hurdles of creating an entity and getting things going, things like that, and trademarking the branding, their logo, and things like that. And I had a couple of my fraternity brothers from college that were also involved in this group, and at the end of the day, we ended up all being just part owners of it. And it was definitely a grassroots endeavor. It started from scratch with nothing, where we found out in January of 2017 that we were going to have a team in this league that had expanded from Louisiana to cover the entire Gulf Coast. And we had 4 months to put a team on the field and have our first game. It was go, go, go. Let's get this done. We got to get uniforms. We got to hire a coach. We got to find players, have tryouts. We got to start marketing. We've got to find a venue. We got to raise money, find sponsors, all of the above. And it was just, nonstop from there. And we, based on the way similar teams around the region and really around the country at this level of play we expected maybe to get 150 people out to our first game. We were blown away that we had well over 800 at our first game.
Wow.
And it kind of made some ripples across the soccer country here in the United States. But they found out, whoa, this new startup team in Mobile had 800-something people at their game. And that attendance number just continued to rise with each home game. And, we broke 1,000 for the first time in our first season. And again, there's a lot of similarly situated teams, even in leagues that are considered to be higher than the league we play in, that have never reached that level of attendance. So that's a testament really to the folks in Mobile and everybody that came together to make it happen.
As I said earlier, I'm not a big soccer fan, but I have followed this enterprise on social media, and it's been amazing to see the response that you have gotten here in Mobile, which as you know, we just lost a franchise here in a sport that is well established in this country. What's the difference? How do you see it with soccer? I think I saw you had 3,000 fans at a recent game.
We haven't reached that number yet.
You're approaching it.
1,500,
okay.
I believe, a little over 1,500 is probably the highest attendance home game that we've had.
That's still a great response, and based on the last Bay Bears game I was at,
Yeah. So do you attribute your success, though, to your marketing and social media type efforts or a combination of those, or can you really put your finger on it? Because I'm blown away. I had no idea that, number one, that Mobile had a semi-pro soccer team, but number two, that it's drawing 1,500, fans a match.
Yeah, it's really a group effort, and that's what we wanted it to be. This is the community's team. It's not just ours. I can assure you, I've never made a dime off of being an owner of this team.
Right.
I mean, I've
Probably the other way, maybe. I don't know.
I would imagine it's the other way.
Exactly, and a lot of time as well, especially during the summers, which it's a burden on my family. My wife is, our summers are pretty much shot now because every weekend in the summer is taken up by soccer. So, and it certainly is a passion project for me, but the reason I believe it's worked is because the community has come together, and that goes from the incredible support we have from the fans, a supporters group that come with their drums and they paint their faces and they bring these little smoke bombs and they sing chants and they that definitely adds to the atmosphere of a soccer game, and then the community support that we've gotten, like our first title sponsor, Hate Blue Brewing. Our first seed money came from them, and I remember we met in the ice house a couple of years ago. It had not been remodeled yet. We're just sitting in this empty warehouse essentially. Keith really wanted a contract. Keith Sherrill, the owner of Hate Blue Brewing, had agreed to help us out, but he really wanted a contract. I said, well, we hadn't drawn one up yet. And he said, well, here's a piece of paper and a pen. You're a lawyer.
Yeah, you can take care of that, right?
So I sat down and wrote up a contract on notebook paper in my own handwriting, and he signed it. And
how about that?
That was our first sponsor. But that's just one example. We've had many other corporate partners that have helped us out. An amazing trade deal with Gulf Coast Tours that we wouldn't be able to do what we do without them, because that provides us with a bus for away games. Yeah, that's just been absolutely huge. They've even taken us to Atlanta. They've taken us to Chattanooga. They've taken us to Shreveport. The other teams in the league are very envious of that relationship. Great relationship with iHeartRadio. And I'm going to miss some folks, so I'm sorry if you're listening and I didn't call, can give you a shout out, because there's been so much support there. So media partners have helped. We've had several folks in the media that have helped give us some exposure, because we can't afford to buy TV ads and put billboards up and all that kind of stuff and paint the side of a bus. We're not doing that. It's been a guerrilla marketing approach and really a word of mouth. And I honestly believe we still haven't scratched the surface of being known by folks in Mobile.
So the chant thing at soccer, that's a worldwide thing, huh?
It's a global thing.
Because you watch the FIFA World or FIFA, however you say that, World Cup, and it's like the chanting, and I was like, man, that's pretty cool. But then I didn't realize we had the same thing. I got to go to a soccer game, Earl. I mean, that's all there is.
We're gonna have to go.
Yeah, we're
gonna go.
I want to hear some chants.
Dennis won't believe it.
You won't.
And if you're looking for me, you may not find me, but you'll hear me. I'm the PA announcer at the game. So
Okay,
cool.
Right. Yeah, we'll do
It's
that.
awesome. It's an awesome story. And I want to go back to the story about South Alabama, because I've got a story too. Our stories don't intersect in that way because I'm a good bit older than you are. But I also met my wife at South Alabama, and I have a passion for South Alabama. As you know, there's a lot of things going on at South. When I was there, it was a commuter school. I mean, it really was, and I was part of that. But the generation that's out there now is benefiting from a lot of enthusiasm. There are structures going up, and I'm sure everybody knows about the stadium coming in September of 20. But the Alumni Association has a lot going on out there at South too, and you have been integral in that. And we want to hear about what the Alumni Association is doing in the Alumni Center.
The universe just exploded. I mean, it was still considered a commuter school when I was there as well. I mean, there were some folks that lived on campus, but not nearly as many, and I'd never lived on campus. But and that's testament to the great work and great leadership of Gordon Moulton, and then just it continued with Tony Waldrop, the current president. They've just done a wonderful job of growing the university in a responsible and sustainable way. With the Alumni Association, I remember being asked to serve on the board. It's probably been about 7 years ago now, and I was happy to do it because it's just the university is something I've always been passionate about. And just in that time frame, you say that I've been integral. Honestly, I would argue that I just kind of fell in behind some folks that were very integral in moving the association to where it is now and growing it to where it is now. There were, while I was still on the board of directors, before I was serving in an officer role, some folks really got the ball rolling on building the McQueen Alumni Center and really growing the association. I just kind of happened to follow in behind them and it's been a great experience, and we're the McQueen Alumni Center is the construction of it is finishing up right now, and then we're set to have a grand opening the last week in January 2020, which is going to be great, and it's timed perfectly with the construction of New Hancock-Whitney Stadium on campus, which will have football games starting in the fall of 2020. And we just wanted to create a home for alumni on campus where bring folks back to campus and make them want to continue to be involved with the university.
Sure.
So as you look down the road 3-5 years, you'll have some impact on where the Alumni Association is at that point. But I mean, what are kind of your goals under your leadership as you look to move that organization forward and get more people involved? I would imagine would be a big effort, I would think.
Certainly. I mean, membership, it's the lifeblood of the association. The university has over 80,000 alumni now. We've got approximately 5,000 paid members of the association all over the country, and honestly all over the globe. There's members that are all over the globe. But the services that the association provides are only possible with that membership and the scholarships. There's so many scholarships that the association gives as well every year. And that's just not possible without membership in the association. One thing with the McQueen Alumni Center that I'm looking forward to is having more opportunities to interact with students. The space we were in before, although it was great, the old Creole home, the space was kind of limiting in what you could do. I envision having opportunities where you bring alumni in from a certain profession and having them interact with students who want to be in that profession. And the Alumni Center is going to be the perfect place for that to happen. I've already started conversations with Ron Nelson at the university, who runs the pre-law program there, about trying to get some sort of an event together where attorneys in the area who happen to be alumni from South Alabama come and they meet with students who are looking to go to law school. And I think those kinds of engagements are really important, not only for the alumni who are engaging with their university, but the students who are just getting this wealth of knowledge from the folks that have kind of already been down the path before.
Well, that's good. Obviously, the alumni, you're right, are the lifeblood of any alumni association. So I wish you guys success in those endeavors. Do you have time to do any for hobbies? I mean, you're a lawyer, this alumni association thing, the soccer team. I mean, do you do anything for fun, or do you have time to do things for fun?
Everything I do is fun. That's the secret. Just all right. Choose things that you love doing to do, and you don't feel like you're ever missing out on the fun. And sure, I go to my son's soccer games. Yeah. He's 9 years old. I enjoy doing that. My daughter has been participating in dance and gymnastics. I like to go to those events.
So as far as and we haven't talked about the lawyering, that's where you spend the majority of your time. But of all the things that you're involved in, I mean, can you pinpoint a favorite? I mean, what's when you wake up in the morning, what are you thinking? I just can't wait. I can't wait to do this today.
That's a hard one.
Well, I mean, I guess it's good that you can't really. I mean, if you can't
pinpoint
if you can't pinpoint a favorite, that's probably not a bad thing.
And don't get me wrong, I enjoy the practice of law. I absolutely do, and I feel like I've been fortunate to fall into an area of the law that kind of fits with my passions. Mm-hmm. I love Mobile. I've always been fascinated by government and local government, and so being able to work with Jay Ross, the county attorney for Mobile County, to provide assistance to the county, and Britton Bonner, who does the economic development work for the city of Mobile, has been great because he's brought me in to help with certain documents and things like that pertaining to economic development. Mm-hmm. We represent the city of Daphne as well. I go to every single one of their city council meetings and their committee meetings, and do a lot of work for them. I just enjoy that side of it, just kind of being there to assist our local leaders in what they're doing to try to provide services to the citizens and do it in a responsible way. So I really enjoy what I do. I'm not in court nearly as often as folks who do nothing but litigation. Mm-hmm. but I'd still do some litigation, mostly representing governmental entities. And I enjoy that side of it too, because, part of it is when somebody sues a government entity, I feel like I'm defending the taxpayers' money,
Right.
So I think that's a pretty noble cause, and I enjoy that I've been given the opportunity to do it. And Adams and Reese is such a great firm. It's really been beneficial to me to be able to work in a firm like this, because not only do we have such a strong group of attorneys in this Mobile office, but it's such a large firm with a big footprint over the entire Southeast and Washington, D.C., that if we run into an issue that maybe somebody in our office has never seen before, well, somebody in our New Orleans office or somebody in our Columbia, South Carolina office, or Jacksonville or Houston or Nashville, or Birmingham, they've seen it probably, and that just enables us to provide better service to our clients.
I mean, I would think being an attorney, are you a big reader? I mean, you'd have to like to read, I would think, because there's a lot of reading involved in that.
Here's the rub on that. Growing up, I was an avid reader, fiction and nonfiction. Loved it. Throughout my 20s, I read. I worked in a bookstore during my stint in California, and, was just burning through one book a day probably. I was reading so much. And then I went to law school. And this saddens me, is that when reading takes up so much of your day-to-day work, I get paid to read. Like, reading is just part of my job. I don't find time to read for pleasure anymore, unfortunately. Well, there is one book that I read a while back that I think anyone who is in business should read, and it's called Raving Fans. And it really taught me a lot about service and about how to treat customers and clients. If you mess up at something and somebody gets upset about something, you can't look at that as a failure. You have to look at that as an opportunity.
Right.
And that's something I really learned from that book. And just an example, I handle all the merchandise for AFC Mobile. I've got 4 bins full of merchandise stacked up in my living room. My wife loves that, by the way.
I'm sure she does.
And so when somebody orders a T-shirt online at afcmobile.net, I go pull the T-shirt, I pack it, and write a little thank you card and put some stuff in it, print a sticker label, take it to the post office the next day. And there was an issue that we had in our first season where we sent somebody a T-shirt and it had a hole in it or something like that, And they were upset, and they sent us an email or something, and everybody else was upset too. How'd you let that T-shirt go out with a hole in it, And I said, guys, this isn't a failure. This is an opportunity. And so I contacted the customer, and I offered to meet them personally with a replacement and refund them the amount that they had paid. And then when I did meet them, I also had thrown several stickers and a koozie and things like that into a bag and gave it to them, and said, I really hope to see you at our next home game. That person hasn't missed a home game yet.
Yeah.
Ever since, and after 3 seasons, yeah. So again, that's just that's why I really like that book, Raving Fans. And it's been a very long time since I read it, but it just kind of put that mentality.
Yeah, good one. We'll have to, that's the one that has not been mentioned yet, so that's good when we learned of a new one. So, well, as we wrap our time up, I do have one more question. This is kind of giving a nod to your love of sports. So, if you only had the ability to watch one sport, either in person or on TV, for the rest of your life, you had to choose one that you had to watch. What would it be?
Soccer.
That was quick.
I knew that was coming.
Very
Probably
good.
Liverpool soccer.
Liverpool, okay.
To be specific.
Okay, very good. Well, Patrick, thanks so much for coming. This has been a lot of fun. We appreciate you giving us
My
your
pleasure.
time.
Thanks so much for having me.
Time flies.
I enjoyed it.
To connect with Patrick on LinkedIn and to learn more about Adams and Reese, South Alabama's Alumni Association, or AFC Mobile, just click on the links in the show notes.
Well, thanks for listening to our podcast today. To never miss an episode, subscribe to Playing Above the Line at iTunes and anywhere else you get your podcast. And be sure to leave us a rating. We'd love to know what you think about our show.
To contact us or to stay connected, follow us on social media at HBKCPAS on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. Thanks for listening.